Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Chimera Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, I can't believe these cards are budget. Some of these cards are, well, ones that were like $7, $8 a little while ago, and all of a sudden, I looked at the prices, and they are less than $1. That's right, even within my budget category now, finally. So, you probably should pick some of these up while they are so cheap. So, with all that said, let's jump into it. But before I jump into it, I probably should already mention this. If you are interested in picking up some of these cards or all of them, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. With that said, first up, let's talk about the artifacts. And one that, I never thought was going to be budget, but they finally started reprinting it a decent amount. Thought Vessel. This is a card that is incredible because, well, when it comes to mana rocks, and Wizards has known this for a while, when it comes to Commander players, 2 mana is the sweet spot for the vast majority of mana rocks out there. You have a mana rock that costs 2, it taps for 1. That's just what they do, except for Soul Ring, which is totally not a bannable card, even though it, costs half that much and gives you twice as much mana. Regardless, that's a different topic. The thing is, Thought Vessel is incredible because, yeah, it costs 2. It only taps for a color, so it does not help you fix your mana. That being said, 1 color, 2 color, even 3 color decks have no problem with that for the most part. But also, there's some very important text on there. You have no maximum hand size. So this is an efficient mana rock. So there are less efficient mana rocks out there that have a utility as well. But still, this is a very efficient mana rock. Again, 2 mana, tapping for 1, ramps you at the right rate. And also, again, gives you no maximum hand size. So for certain decks out there, and I'm not saying every deck out there, there's a lot that like having the maximum hand size, but there are certain decks that are like, yeah, I can really take advantage of that more than others because I'm going to be drawing an absurd amount of cards, especially if your commander maybe has a card draw effect, ability, trigger, whatever it is. Yeah, this is a crazy good card. Just 61 cents somehow. This card used to be like, I don't know, $5 or so. So yeah, seeing this finally below $1 is absolutely crazy. I love it. Next up, Bite Nefasa. Technically, this actually could have fit into enchantments or artifacts. Apparently, Moxfield put it into artifacts, though, so we're keeping it here. Anyway, a legendary enchantment artifact for 2 blue. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Pay 1 a blue, tap. Creature's opponent's control attack this turn if able. Just 79 cents right now. This one that has fluctuated over the years. It is so good. Now, first of all, because this is both an enchantment and an artifact, it can fit in those kind of, I was going to say tribal, but theme decks essentially for artifacts or enchantments, and it can fit into there and have good synergies with that. That being said, yeah, it does make it a little easier for your opponents to remove, being one of 2 types. That being said, most of the removal that it gets rid of, artifacts tends to also get rid of enchantments, except for maybe in like red. That being said, yeah, being able to draw an absurd amount of cards based on combat damage, that is awesome. It's basically Coastal Piracy, but better because it also includes that, it's a goading effect, kind of. It's like a forced combat, I should say, because your opponent can still attack you. That being said, being able to force your opponent's creatures to actually attack is massive because, again, they might not be in a position where they want to attack. They might just have, little tiny creatures and you've got a big army and you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm fine with you swinging. Even if it's at me, great. Swing, I'll take your creatures out. Or you're going to be forcing them, especially if you have that good defense, that big army, force them to go elsewhere. Have them hit another opponent and do your dirty work for you. So yeah, this, while also, leaving that person open for you to get through on them, obviously, with your creatures to draw a lot of cards. It's a crazy good card in a lot of decks out there. Again, enchantment synergies, artifact synergies, creatures getting through synergies, double strike synergies, and forced combat synergies. It's a crazy good card, just 79 cents right now. Next up, though, this is just how Moxfield has it ordered, apparently. Creatures. I guess we're going alphabetical, maybe? We'll see. Anyways, Evolution Sage, 89 cents right now. This is one that has fluctuated over the years since it came out because Proliferate became an absurdly strong thing. It was already very strong, but then we got more Proliferate cards, and yeah, what else is powerful? Landfall, especially if you're in green. So let's combine the two. A 3/2 Elf Druid for 2 and a green. Landfall, whenever a land enters battlefield under control, Proliferate, just 89 cents right now. Again, this card was like $2 or $3 at one point. It started off budget friendly and then all of a sudden wasn't. This is a card that is so good. First of all, landfall decks typically have certain synergies as well with, making creature tokens, but also maybe even getting counters on those, like a Feldar Retreat kind of thing, essentially. So being able to proliferate with that, getting extra +1/+1 counters on things, That's great. Obviously goes really well into, the green strategy of getting lands into play, which is just what green does, right? Rampant growth, those types of cards. But essentially, wait for his bubble, love you. Anyways, being able to essentially throw this into any deck that really cares about counters and also cares about getting lands into play. I mean, you don't really have to even focus that heavily on, getting lands into play potentially, even if it's just a deck that cares about proliferating because, again, you're in green. You've got ways to do that. You probably have some fetch lands in there as well, like Evolving Wilds, etc. So yeah, being able to utilize this to proliferate, whether that's, again, Super Friends with those kinds of counters, charge counters, +1 counters, poison counters, any kind of counter is absolutely massive. This is a huge card and can do some really absurd things. Moving on, Mana Gorger Hydra. Speaking of counters, I can't believe this one is budget friendly now. 62 cents. This is a card that in my very first deck, my very first deck, not the first deck on the channel, my Rishkar deck, that was the first commander deck I ever built. I splurged to get this card because I was like, oh, okay, I'm building a deck. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, this is fun. Counters. Yeah, I learned later that, the amount of counters that I had was pretty absurd. And so it took a long time to actually move all those around. So I stopped playing those kinds of decks regardless for the most part. Regardless, this is a card that was like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. 1/1 Hydra, trample for just 3 mana. Whenever a player casts a spell, put a counter on it. Oh my gosh, I love that effect because, hey, you know what, opponents? Go ahead, cast your spells. I'm going to cast spells too. I've got 4 players at the table in total. There's going to be tons of spells cast each turn. Yeah, I mean, even just at a base level, like 1 spell cast per turn, which is probably below the average, you would think, essentially. Yeah, you're going to be getting 4 counters on this bad boy throughout the game. Every single trip around the table. This can become a huge threat. Absolutely no time. It can trample, get that damage through. Counter synergies work really well as well. Of course, powers matter synergies as well. Like, hey, Return of the Wild Speaker. I'll draw however many cards. Yeah, it's a crazy good card. And one that you can just throw in. Not saying just throw in any deck, but it works well in Hydras. It works well in counter synergy decks. It works well in big creature decks. Especially, I love those kind of big creature decks that are like low to the ground or like cheap creatures that get bigger throughout the game. And just like, you get them down early and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, Scoop Mob is gross. I love this kind of a card. Next up, Mayhem Devil. This one is one that skyrocketed in price because treasures become very apparent in Commander. Became very popular in Commander quite quickly. A 3/3 Devil for 3 mana in Rakdos. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, 1 damage to any target. Any target. This is any player sacrificing any permanent. Now, whether that's you sacrificing an Evolving Wilds, your opponent sacrificing a Burnished Heart, another opponent sacrificing, yes, a treasure, which really puts this over the top. Yeah, this can do some really absurd things. And again, any target. Throwing it on any target is absurd. Give this thing Death Touch. Have fun just taking out whatever creatures you want to take out, essentially. Yeah, it's a really crazy effect, and one that can be game-ending in many scenarios. One that can really work well with damage doubling, damage tripling, infect-type effects, maybe. Tainted Strike, those kinds of things. So yeah, Mayhem Devil is really seeing a good amount of play for Riskrat style, treasure style decks, and those have gotten quite popular. So yeah, happy to see this reprinted. 58 cents right now. Next up, Setessan Champion. Oh my goodness gracious. A 1/3 Human Warrior for 3 mana. Constellation, whatever enchantment enters the battlefield under control, you get a counter on this. Oh, and by the way, also draw cards. So it's kind of like Mana Gorger Hydra meets a card we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, being able to say, oh yeah, in an Enchantress style deck, I'm just going to get an absurd amount of card draw off of this. Again, it's on ETB for enchantments, not just on cast. So hey, if you've got like a mass recursion spell to actually get all your enchantments back out of your graveyard back into play, and there's a couple of those essentially, that also counts too. Or if you got, like blink effects as well, that counts with enchantments as well. But yeah, this is also just a massive threat for you. Now, the only downside of this, I guess, technically, is that it's not an enchantment itself, so it doesn't help out in those kinds of synergies, but still kind of an upside as well, so it doesn't have, extra removal potential, Anyways, yeah, it's a crazy good card, a crazy good Enchantress type effect, and also a massive threat in its own, which most Enchantresses are not, because they're like, oh, I'm just a little 1/1. Oh, no, don't hurt me, but also, hey, draw a ton of cards. So, yeah, it's a really cool card. Next up, Eidolon Blossom. Speaking of which, the card I just mentioned, essentially, 2/2 Enchantment Creature Spirits. This one is an enchantment for 4 mana. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under control, draw a card. So very similar to the previous card. This one does ETB, draws a card, which is very nice. And also, again, counts any enchantment entering the battlefield under our control. Just entering. Lovely. See, Enchantress style decks love this card. Again, finally down to a very reasonable, just 30 cents. So if you have an Enchantress deck, make sure you're considering these 2 cards. Next up, though, actual enchantments that are not creatures, I assume. Again, Moxfield is just ordering these however they want, so I'm not sure why they're like, yeah, this is an artifact, even though it's an artifact enchantment. This is a creature, even though it's a creature enchantment. Don't know what their exact requirements are, but here we go. Utopia Sprawl, an enchantment aura for a single green mana. Enchant forest enters the battlefield with a color. Whatever enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of the chosen color. This is a card that got quite expensive because it had never seen a reprint. I think it was like an original Ravnica, potentially. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I hadn't seen a reprint in forever. It is one of the very few, turn one ramp spells, essentially. I mean, there's a couple, right? But it's one of the very few, like kind of like a wild growth, basically, but more specific. This one, again, needs to go on a forest. So whether that's a basic forest, which is cards like I play for the most part, or, if you've got an Alpha Duel, congratulations. Or there's other ones in between, right? Obviously, Shocklands, those kinds of things. But yes, make sure that you have enough force in your deck before just throwing this in there, because you don't want to be like, oh, cool, okay, I can play this, but I've got like a tap land that came into play, and it only taps for red and green, and it's not a forest, so I can't attach this. Okay, just going to wait around for my ramp then, I guess. No, make sure you do that, but still, if you have enough forest, this is a great and amazing turn one play, because not only does it ramp you, but also fixes your mana, and what other cards do that at 1 mana? Like nothing, essentially. I mean, okay, Birds of Paradise, but that one is, when it comes to like protected ramp, that is the least form of protection on creatures. This is slightly more protected being on a land, essentially. Though it is a 2-for-1, so there's a little bit of risk to that. That being said, yeah, being able to essentially be like, yeah, I'm ramping, I'm fixing my mana. Love it. Next up, Blind Obedience, a grossly effective card, 85 cents right now. Enchantment for 1 and a white. This actually, the way that they have this one out, because they made it like look more old school, actually makes it a bit more, I'd say, easier but harder for new players, because it does say extort, but it doesn't have like the reminder text there that shows the Orzhov symbol, which confuses some new players that they're like, oh, it can't fit in a black deck because, it needs black and white in order to actually go into those decks. It doesn't. It can fit into any white deck, essentially, because that was a reminder text. That being said, you need to know what Extort does, which is crazy good. Hey, whenever you cast a spell, pay an Orzhov mana, either black or white, drain each opponent 1, gain that much life. So basically in Commander, it's like, hey, pay 1, drain 3, gain 3. Gross. Works really well in life gain strategies and drain strategies too, but also on top of that, an additional effect, artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. That is a huge slowing effect, especially, again, if your opponents aren't lucky enough to be playing with green ramp. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm counting on my mana rocks to help ramp me, and they can't utilize those mana rocks right away. Also, blockers get slowed down, and other activated ability artifacts too. A crazy good card for many strategies out there. Next up, Darksteel Mutation. Maybe one of the, not meanest cards in Magic. It's like a fair mean card, though, essentially. It's one that you shouldn't really get too upset, potentially, depending on the play group, when someone plays it against you, but it can be something that can be very aggravating because your deck might be built around your commander, and your commander's still there, but not. An enchantment aura, enchant creature for 1 and a white. Enchant creature is an insect artifact creature, base power down to 0/1, has indestructible, lose all our abilities, card types, and creature types. Infinitely powerless. I love that. That is a really good flavor text right there. But yes, being able to say, okay, your commander who you built your entire deck around is still there, but now it's a bug that is hard to deal with. So you can't just like, okay, I'll swing at you, block my creature, please, unless they have like Wither or Infect, but that's not going to happen. Basically, your commander is useless until you get rid of this or find a way to like sacrifice your commander or whatnot. Like, your deck might not function. So yes, it's a very, very effective, very, very brutal card. Next up, Shared Animosity. This card was like $4, $5, $6 because I think it's from like I think it's Lorwyn block time essentially, and it hadn't been reprinted for a long, long time. Champ for 3 mana, just 3 mana for this effect, mind you. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. Oh my goodness. This is basically like, hey, do you have a tribal deck? Does it have red in it? Cool. Let's be aggressive and swing and hit your opponent for a bajillion damage. Not a bajillion. I mean, unless you're actually swinging with a bajillion creatures, but bajillion's not really a number. Anyways, being able to just say, yeah, okay, I've got 10 goblins. Cool. They're just little 1/1s. Oh, cool. I swing with all my goblins. Oh, great. +10. Good luck, opponents, trying to block that. So yeah, a crazy good effect. Great for tribal decks. Great for tribal decks with red. Moving on, Reconnaissance Mission. Basically, Biden of Thassa, which I talked about earlier, minus the goading type effect, essentially. This is basically Coastal Piracy, but better. Chip for 2 blue, blue. Whenever a creature control deals combination to a player, you may draw a card. Cycling for 2 mana. So it's flexible too that you can get rid of if you don't need it. If you just need that like 1 card right away and you're like, I need to get something because I'm in big trouble. Okay, cycle it away. If not, yeah, utilize this for incredible synergies. Incredible card draw. Yeah, quite good. Moving on, speaking of card draw, I did not think that this would be budget friendly. Here we go. Teferi's Angel's Insight Legendary Gem for 4 mana. Finally! Thought Reflection is a very good card. This is now cheaper than Thought Reflection somehow, and this is better. I mean, okay, Thought Reflection is 7 mana, but you double up every draw. So includes like your first draw on the turn. That being said, this is a legendary treatment. Says if you draw a card except the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Yeah, being able to double up every single one of your draws except for your initial draw on your turn, that's fine. You're gonna be utilizing a lot of draw effects if you're utilizing this card in your deck. You probably have a commander that, helps you draw whenever certain things happen. This helps with so many decks out there. I feel like every single spoiler season, I'm like, okay, what works well with this commander? Teferi's Angel's Insight, because Wizards likes putting commanders these days that have, card draw on them. So there you go. Being able to be like, okay, cool, double it up. Okay, cool, double it up. A fantastic card. Next up, oh my goodness, Reflections of Lit Jara. This card is so good in tribal decks. Enchantment for 5 mana in total. Whenever it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Choose the creature type of the tribal deck that you're with. Anyways, whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell, and of course a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. Oh my goodness. So unless you're like, I guess Legendary Tribal wouldn't really work with this unless you have a bunch of like ETBs you can take advantage of. The Legend Rule will take them out. Any other kind of tribal deck that has blue in it, though, you're like, okay, cool, get this in play and double up all of my creatures. Yeah, that's worth the 5 mana. It's a crazy good effect for many decks out there. Tribal is a very, very, very popular strategy. A very good card to consider for just 89 cents. But now we are moving on to instants, and the first one up is 85-cent Crop Rotation. You gotta be kidding me. This is such a good card. Instant for a single green mana. Basically, sacrifice a land. Cool. Okay, that's it, right? It's terrible. No. Search life for a land card, put on the battlefield, then shuffle. The thing is, this does not say, hey, basic land, because that would kind of be not useless, but like you'd be like, hey, I've got my forest. Let's change it out for a mountain. Yay! And you might do that with this. Most likely, though, you're like, okay, cool. Let me go get my utility land that is incredible. I mean, if you've got like a Gaia's Cradle in your deck, congratulations. Congratulations for having like a $500 card, or you proxied it. But yeah, go get whatever crazy good land that you need out of your deck, put into play. And also just like landfall decks are like, cool, yeah, okay, I'll pay 1 mana, instant speed, go get another land to get all my landfall triggers. And also it comes into play on tap, so utilize it right away, unless the land itself says like comes into play tap for whatever reason. Anyways, very, very good card. Next up, Assassin's Trophy. I cannot believe this is 50 cents right now. This is like an $8, $9 card previously. Instant for just 2 mana in Golgari. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search life for a basic land card from the battlefield, then shuffle. Yeah, you're ramping your opponent. Big deal. When it comes to 2 mana, get rid of anything. And again, it can be a permanent that is a land, so technically you wouldn't be ramping them, right? But they'd go get their basic land and replace it. That being said, anything for 2 mana. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, there's a slight downside to it, but it's going to be worth it because you want to get rid of that massive threat for just 2 mana. Again, a crazy good card. I cannot believe that this is 50 cents right now. Go pick that one up. Moving on, Counterspell. This one that has fluctuated over the years. It sees reprints. It doesn't see reprints. It doesn't. It keeps going, like hovering around like the $2 range essentially for a while. It wasn't budget friendly for the longest time. And obviously, Counterspell is just the quintessential counterspell, obviously. It's an instant for blue, counter target spell. Very simple, very effective, very, very good. Just the bane of everyone's existence. If you're sitting across from the blue mage and they've got 2 islands untapped and you're like, well, I've got this really big, exciting play, but let's see if it gets through. Oh, it doesn't get through because of counterspell. So yeah, very effective. There are few counterspells out there that are just strictly better than this. I mean, Mana Drain is strictly better than this, but there are very few that are just better than the OG counterspell. So yeah, being 76 cents, pick up some of these if you're into countering things. Next up, Chaos Warp. Let's do the Time Warp again. Time Warp's a different card. Anyway, instant for 2 in a red. The other target permanent shovels into the library, then reveals the top card of the library. It's a permanent card on the battlefield. This is a good panic button in red, being like, okay, hey, yeah, that Blight Steel, that's scary. I don't like it anymore. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, it's a good panic button being like, yeah, that thing needs to go. You hopefully don't get something else that's massive. So yeah, there obviously is a downside to this, but you're usually willing to, you're in red, right? You're willing to roll the dice, essentially. So yeah, basically, it's a really big feel bad when you're like, okay, I got rid of that threat. Oh, a bigger threat came. You're like, okay, cool, yeah. I'll get rid of your Colossal Dreadmaw or whatever, essentially. Oh, Blightsteel came out. Okay, that was a bad move. There are definitely bad plays that can happen with this, but yeah, the more of the time you're willing to be like, okay, yeah, I need to deal with that somehow, and I'm in red, so I don't have a way to deal with that, like, giant indestructible thing for the most part. Let's try something else. Moving on. So we are dealing with things Wear and Tear, a crazy good, crazy flexible, crazy awesome card that was never budget friendly for a long time. Wear is an instant for 2 mana in red. Destroy target artifact. Tear is an instant for just single white mana. Destroy target enchantment. Put them together, you get both because you can fuse them or just do one or the other. Very effective, very flexible, a very good card. But now, finally, the final card I want to highlight. Apparently only one sorcery that I found that I wanted to highlight today. Anyways, Culling Ritual, just 72 cents right now. A sorcery for 4 mana in Golgari. A really good Wrath, depending on the scenario, but could just be a big blowout play for you. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Add red or green for each permanent destroyed this way. This is like a board wipe / ritual all in one. Now, it is completely circumstantial. Obviously, if there's nothing in play that has, mana value 2 or less, you're not getting anything out of it. Also destroys your own things too, but typically you'd probably be utilizing this in a deck that maybe doesn't have or doesn't care too much about the low mana value cards out there. That being said, this wipes out, doesn't say non-token, so this wipes out, but your opponents are going to have treasures. If they do, they're going to sacrifice those treasures in response, essentially. But ones that they maybe can't sacrifice in response if they don't have mana for them, like, blood tokens, clue tokens, food tokens, you get all those. You also get just like creature tokens too. You also get, again, anything that's probably most mana rocks out there that players are using are 2 or less. You're getting all those, and you're a green player, obviously, so you're taking really big advantage of that, being like, okay, cool, I still get my ramp. I also get mana off of your ramp that is now gone, and I get mana off of everything else. So this can be like a 4 mana wipe a ton of things, just completely change the game, and also like, oh cool, I got like 10 mana out of this. So it can be a giant ritual effect for you to then to just drop a giant massive threat onto the board as well. So it's a really cool card. Again, just 72 cents, not for every single deck out there, but yeah, if you've got a friend out there that's playing like their token deck and they're just like, yeah, I'm destroying you with all my tiny little and then you're like, oh hey, let's just wipe those out and thank you for the 20 mana. Congratulations to me. Goodbye. But now as this episode is come to a close, a quick reminder that if you are interested in any of these amazing cards that, again, I can't believe it's not butter. No, I couldn't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it's less than $1. There we go. Make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. Comment below with your thoughts on these cards. Let me know if you think of any other cards right now that are currently less than $1 that I did not highlight. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.